Hello, everyone, and welcome to WOBI on Self-Management with Marshall Goldsmith. I'm Chris Stanley, WOBI's Global Content Director, and it's a pleasure for me to be back here with you today for this, our second digital program of 2023. Thank you all for joining us once again today, and a special thank you as ever to all of our WOBI pass holders for joining us for this session today. We're delighted to be joined today by Marshall Goldsmith, multi-New York Times best-selling author who has for over a decade been ranked as the world's #1 executive coach. In our session today, Marshall will be taking us through a series of lessons around successful self-management that he has developed over the course of many years working with some of the world's most successful CEOs. If you joined us for our first masterclass this year, back in January, you'll know that we've made some changes to our digital sessions this year. In order to simplify the user experience, we are running the sessions directly on Zoom, and the on-demand recordings will now appear and be available directly through your account on wobi.com. We've also changed up the format slightly this year. We know that for many people, the commitment of joining us for 2 days for these programs was proving more and more difficult. So we have been working to streamline the content and to provide you with programs that contain the same great content, but condensed over 1 rather than 2 days. We also wanted to leave some additional time for Q&A. One of the great advantages of doing these sessions live is the ability to receive your interactions with our experts. And so we have left 30 minutes for the Q&A in the session today. As always, we're pleased to be able to offer you simultaneous interpretation for the program today from English to Spanish and Italian. Please just select the language that you would like to listen to on the pop-up menu bar on the video player down at the bottom of the screen. So over the course of the session today, Marshall is going to be sharing with us practices to help us achieve both our personal and our organizational goals. He will discuss the 3 keys to a great life: ambition, aspiration, and action, and what each of those mean in practice. He'll also look at why leaders often find it so difficult to ask for help and support and what we can do about it, as well as focusing on key learnings to help us become better coaches to others. As I say, Marshall is going to be presenting for about an hour, and then he'll be taking your questions. So please do send in your questions when you, as soon as you have them. You can see there's the Q&A box or tab down there at the bottom of the screen. Send those in English, Spanish, or Italian, and we'll get through as many as we have time for in the 30 minutes available. Now, before we get going, I mentioned at the top that we have a number of WOBI pass holders joining us today. For those of you who are not WOBI pass holders and are interested in accessing more digital content from WOBI, the WOBI Pass could be a great solution. It's a yearly subscription to all of WOBI's digital content library, providing access to the world's very best management and leadership content from some of the world's most respected business thought leaders. It includes access to all of the previous masterclasses on demand, as well as executive summaries and video summaries from each of those classes, more than 100 hours of content in total. Topics that we're going to be covering in upcoming masterclasses, which your WOBI Pass will also give you access to, include authentic leadership, entrepreneurship, leading innovation with world-renowned experts such as Yuri Levine, Bill George, and Danielle Lamar. So if you're interested in learning more, you can take advantage of a free 7-day trial to get a taste of all that the WOBI Pass includes. So I hope for those of you who aren't WOBI Pass holders, you will consider joining the community, and very much look forward to welcoming you back to future masterclasses as WOBI Pass holders. If you've got any questions, please do reach out to us by email or phone, and we'll be pleased to answer them. You can see the email addresses up there on the screen. If you've got any issues during the session today that you'd like to reach out to us about, email is the best way to do that. We've got our staff ready and waiting to answer any queries that you might have. You can see that we've got different email addresses for different languages, so just reach out to the one that best applies to you. Right, so without further ado, it is a pleasure for me to introduce to you Marshall Goldsmith, who's going to be leading our program today. A world-renowned business educator and coach, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith has for over a decade, as I mentioned at the top, been ranked as the world's #1 executive coach and the world's #1 management thinker. Through simple and practical advice, Marshall helps leaders achieve and sustain positive behavior change to drive positive impact in their organizations. He's the author and editor of 36 books, which include What Got You Here Won't Get You There and Triggers, both recognized by Amazon as 2 of the top 100 leadership books ever written. So it is a pleasure to be joining with us today, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris. It is wonderful for me to be here. Very honored to be working with you today. I will briefly introduce myself and we will begin. My name is Marshall. I'm from a small town called Valley Station, Kentucky. I went to a little engineering school, Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. I got an MBA at Indiana University and a PhD at UCLA. I was a college professor and dean when I was very young. Then for the next 45 years, I've done 3 things: travel all about the world speaking and teaching. So I've been to 102 countries, and on American Airlines alone, I have over 11 million frequent flyer miles. So I've been a mega traveler, and I love speaking and teaching. The second thing I do, which I'm most famous for, as Chris mentioned, is I coach executives. I'm very honored. I've been the coach of 5 people who've been considered CEO of the Year in the United States. I've been coach of the CEO of Ford and Pfizer and Glaxo and the World Bank and the Mayo Clinic and the Rockefeller Foundation, St. Jude's Children's Hospital. So as a coach, I've done a lot of work with leaders on a for-profit basis and a lot on a non-for-profit basis, trying to help nonprofit organizations who are doing good deeds. And then finally, I write and edit books or articles, as Chris mentioned, and I have done 51 books aside from those 4 New York Times bestsellers. Most of these books were purchased only by my mother, my father, and associated relatives. So I've written a lot of books. A few people bought the 4 I mentioned. Now, anything else? I've been married 48 years. My wife's a psychologist. I live now in Nashville, Tennessee. And if you have children listening, they might know of some of my neighbors. Keith Urban is my neighbor, and Nicole Kidman. And across the street is Taylor Swift. So I do have some famous neighbors in the music business here in Nashville, Tennessee. And as a hobby, I adopt people. I've developed a program called 100 Coaches. I years ago made a little video on LinkedIn. I'm going to talk about it. It's related to our first exercise. And I was asked who are your heroes, and they were kind and generous people. And the woman said, you should be more like them. Well, that exercise basically changed my life. And that's the first thing we're going to be talking about today, is what's called the heroes exercise. Now, what are we talking about today? Becoming the person you want to be. My mission is helping very successful people achieve positive long-term change in their behavior. And one thing I'm so proud of is I've really changed the coaching dynamic from the fix the loser to help the winner business. My clients are not losers. My clients are winners. And the people are winners that listen to me. You're a winner. You wouldn't be on this call right now. You're interested in developing yourself, becoming a better leader. That differentiates you to start with. So what I'm going to be talking about is this: helping you become the person that you want to be. As was mentioned in my talk, it's about self-management. It's about helping you become the person you want to be. Also, I give away almost all my materials. So if you want any of my articles, just send me an email, marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. I'm happy to get emails. I always like to talk to people. And my website, www.marshallgoldsmith.com. And if you're ever in Nashville, Tennessee, and you want to stop by, I take a walk every day. And I always invite people that go to my courses to come to take a walk with me, which I've done with a bunch of people. It's always great fun. So let's get started. Go to the first slide. Now, what are our goals today? Goal number one, I've already alluded to. We're going to practice something called the heroes exercise. And this heroes exercise is a great way to help you focus on what is most important in your life. Yeah, we're going to talk about self-management, but the question is management to what? So we need to get you thinking about that first. I'm going to talk about the importance of three things: aligning our ambitions, our aspirations, and our actions, and why this is so important. I'm going to talk about something called the credibility matrix. And this is probably something you've never heard before. It's in my new book, The Earned Life. And it's going to talk about when you need to prove yourself and when you need to let go. I'm going to discuss empathy in a way I think is probably different than you've heard before. And we'll talk about how empathy can be a positive thing, and on the other hand, how it can be negative. And then finally, I'm going to finish with something called the daily question process, and especially active questions. I'm going to share something with you that takes about 3 minutes a day. It's going to cost nothing and help you get better at almost anything. Some of you are skeptical right now. 3 minutes a day costs nothing and help me get better at almost anything? Impossible. Too good to be true. Well, half the people that start doing this quit within 2 weeks. They don't quit because it doesn't work. They quit because it does work. So everything I'm going to teach you today, I'm going to give you advance warning. It's not going to be hard to understand. It's hard to do. It takes a lot of courage, it takes some humility, and it takes discipline to actually live this stuff. Becoming the person we want to become is far from easy. It requires a lot of work. Overcoming inertia, just being what we have been. And as my most famous book says, what got you here won't get you there. I'm sure you're already a successful person. You wouldn't be listening to me right now. What led you to success today may not be exactly what you need for tomorrow. So let's get started. Next slide. Now, the heroes exercise. We're going to begin with an exercise. I want you to think about two of your most important heroes. One of these heroes could be a fictional character, someone from a book, a historical character. I would also like you to pick one person who is alive that you could personally contact. So I want you to think of two people you would define as heroes. Now I'm going to help you. As you ponder this question, no person is perfect. So I'm not expecting you to pick perfect human beings or flawless human beings. That's not real. I want you to think about two people who are heroes to you. And I say heroes, you admire them. You would like to be them. They've helped you have a better life. Maybe you're thinking, my life is better because I met this person. And so I want you to think of two heroes. Now, if we look at the next slide, consider these two heroes, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. Question number one, and I want you to write this down right now. Why is this person your hero? For each of these two people, just take a second. Why is this person your hero? There's a million people out there you could refer to. Why these two specific people? Why this specific person? And then number two, what changes can you make in your life right now to become more like this person who is a hero to you? Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, this exercise totally changed my life. My life is literally 1/3 of my time is spent differently because I went through this exercise. I went through the exercise and I was given a challenge. Who are your heroes? My heroes were kind and generous people who were nice teachers. And as Chris knows, some of these people have spoken before at the WOBI. People like Peter Drucker was a hero to me. I was on his advisory board for 10 years. Alan Mulally, who's also spoken here, probably the best CEO in the world in the last several years. Frances Hesselbein just died at age 107, an amazing woman. Peter Drucker said the greatest leader I ever met. These are just wonderful and kind people who are nice teachers to me. Well, I was given a challenge. How can you be more like them? Well, I decided to adopt these 15 people, teach them all I know for free. And when they got old, they had to do the same thing. I made a video, put it on LinkedIn, thinking 100 people would apply. Well, it turned out 18,000 people applied for adoption. Now I've adopted 400 people. We have a program called 100 Coaches, which is a large part of my life right now. Well, what I want you to do is the same as me. I wanted to be like Peter Drucker, Warren Bennis, Paul Hersey, other great thinkers in my field. And to a degree in my life, I'm happy to say I became like them. I'm not saying I'm as good as them. On the other hand, what I do is similar to what they did. And I'm very happy with that decision. Well, here's what I want you to do. Why is this person your hero? And what changes can you make in your life right now to become more like this person who is a hero to you? Ponder this exercise now, and then when we finish, you can think about it some more. Now I'm going to give you an immediate assignment, an immediate take home. The one of your heroes who is still alive, I want you to contact that person, and I want you to say, I just went through an exercise. I was asked to pick someone who's a hero to me. I could have picked anyone in the world. I picked you. Here is why you are a hero to me. And I just want to say thank you. Well, I've done this exercise with a bunch of people, and the results of that little contact are pretty impressive. How would you feel if someone called you and said that? How would it make you feel on the inside? Make you feel wonderful. How do you think it'll make them feel? So this is a wonderful way you can actually identify someone who has made a huge positive difference in your life and thank them. It's also a wonderful way to begin our little talk today, because I'm going to give you some techniques to becoming the person you want to be. Well, this exercise is really going to help you define who is that person I want to be. And by the way, as I said earlier, I can't answer that question for you. The answer to that question has to come from one place, inside you. Inside you. Next slide. Now, what's important for having a great life? Well, what is important for having a great life? I've spent a lot of time pondering this, and if you look at what leads to a great life, there are just a few key variables that are the most important. One key variable for having a great life is take care of yourself. Take care of your health. And I'm not an expert on taking care of your health. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not going to talk a lot about that. That is clearly one element of having a great life. Dr. Bob Waldinger from Harvard is in charge of the longest long-term generational study ever done on human beings. And they've looked at people for over 80 years, 3 generations. And he's talked about what is important for having a great life. And one of the first things that does come up is obviously health. Have a great life, take care of yourself. If that doesn't work, probably the rest of it won't help much. The second characteristic for having a great life is build important and positive relationships with the people around you. Build positive relationships with people you love. And it's very interesting for some of the findings on this, because some of it I learned a lot myself. It's not just the big relationships, it's the small relationships. For example, having a positive relationship with the person who checks out your groceries. I thought about this, and really I historically have not been as good at this as my wife, who's really good at this. I thought, well, why is that important for you having a great life? What's in that for you? And one of my good friends is Martin Lindstrom. Martin is the world's expert on branding, just a great human being and brilliant guy. And he taught me something, that we all have what are called mirror neurons. What does that mean? We all mirror back emotional reactions. We see happiness, we feel happier. We see sorrow, we feel sad. According to Dr. Waldinger's work, which I have no reason to doubt, people that have these, what he calls casual relationships that are positive, have a better life. So one characteristic, take care of your health. 2, positive relationships. The third factor for having a great life is you need to make enough money to have a comfortable living. So for most of you listening, you're probably going to do pretty well at this, but you need to make enough money to have a comfortable living. You don't have to be rich. On the other hand, once you get much beyond a middle class level of income, money is not much correlation between happiness and life and money. There's not a negative or positive correlation. Over the COVID period, and that's where I learned a lot of what I teach you today, my friend Mark Thompson and I had the privilege of spending 600 hours with 60 amazing human beings. And who they are is not a secret. Their names are in my book, The Earned Life. Just amazing people, including people like Pau Gasol, famous Spanish basketball star, played for the Lakers, coming to his retirement of his number in LA in a little bit. Just a great guy. Curtis Martin, National Football League Hall of Fame. Wonderful, brilliant guy too. Great thinker, as is Pau Gasol. And then Telly Leon. If you ever saw the play Aladdin on Broadway in New York, he was Aladdin for 3 years. We also had people like, the CEO of Russell Investments, the CEO of Ancestry.com, CEO of Cardinal Health, president of the World Bank, head of the Rockefeller Foundation. Amazing human beings, amazing human beings. Every week, I heard these people talk about their lives. Every week they talked about what went well, and every week they talked about what they wanted to do better. Well, that led to a lot of what I'm trying to teach you today. Now, we've talked about 3 things for having a great life. Take care of your health, great relationships, and make a comfortable living. Assuming you do all that, what else matters? The first thing is going to go back to our first exercise, aspiration. Who we want to become. You really need to have a clear vision of who do I want to be? And this vision is greater than any time-bound goal. We all need a higher aspiration. For me, being around people like Peter Drucker and Francis Hesselbein inspired me. My higher aspiration was to help as many people as I could in the time I have left on earth to do it. And a lot of that higher aspiration came from these people. And I say it's not even time bound. I'd like to do things that go beyond the time I'm here on earth that help people through books or articles or whatever I can do. So it's important to have some sense of, why am I here? What is my higher aspiration? Next, our ambitions. Our ambitions are what we want to achieve. What are our goals? And our goals, by definition, are time bound. What do I want to achieve within a certain time frame? And then finally, we have our actions. What are we doing now? And how do our immediate activities connect to our ambitions and our aspirations? What am I doing right now? And if we look at the concept of our actions, a couple of things. One, am I enjoying the process of life? And number 2, am I fully engaged in what I'm doing? And what have we learned? If you have a sense of purpose, it doesn't have to be religious, but a sense of higher purpose. Why am I doing this stuff? If you have clear ambitions and you're making progress toward those goal achievements that are connected to those aspirations, and you're engaged in and enjoy the process of life, you won. You just won. Next slide. Now, an interesting phrase. What are you overwaiting for? What are we overwaiting for? That is, where are we putting maybe more attention than we could? Some people, historically, most people have overweighted in what I call the action phase. They focused on immediate pleasure, short-term stimulation, at the expense of deeper values and achievement. Our ancestors were mostly very poor people. Not good or bad, they were very poor people. They were brought up in an environment where they didn't have a lot of money. They didn't have time to think about lofty aspirations. They were living day-to-day lives. Most people today are kind of lost in the action phase. They're watching the video game. They're kind of lost in that. And very important to be sensitive to that. It's important to enjoy life and enjoy the process of life, but not be lost in that. Some people are lost in the aspiration phase. These would be people who tend to be lost in their heads, maybe idealistic. You see some of this on Facebook, that people that talk about very lofty things, they're not really doing much to change anything. They're not achieving a lot. They don't seem to be enjoying themselves, but they're lost in some sense of higher purpose that's disconnected from their day-to-day achievement and day-to-day actions. The third area where most of the people I coach, and probably most of you need to be sensitive, is the ambition phase. We can become what I call addicted to achievement. And we can forget sometimes, why are we achieving in the first place? We can become addicted to achievement and forget, why am I achieving this stuff? Now, let's stop and talk a little bit about overweighting. I'm going to start with action. What I'm going to say next is very important if you have children. About 25 years ago, I made a prediction. I said within 20 years or so, there's going to be something like what is now called the internet. And there will be TV quality audio-visual transmission that's instantly available at low or no cost. And I made a prediction. I said, when that happens, media addiction will surpass drug addiction and alcohol addiction combined as a social problem. We are already there. Media addiction in our society is a complete and total disaster, and it's only going to get worse. This is one, if you have children, I hope you listen closely to what I'm saying next. The average kid in the United States that is flunking out of school spends 55 hours a week on non-academic media. 55 hours a week. TV, movies, video, games. 55 hours a week. Very important to realize something. If you want to have a great life, live your own life. Don't get lost in the football game. Don't get lost in the rock star. I talked about my son. I said, one of the amazing things in the new world is how much time people waste playing video games. Ridiculous. My son said, Dad, you got no idea what you're talking about. People spend hours watching other people play video games. I didn't even know what he was talking about. I want you to look this up if you get a chance. A person named PewDiePie. Over 100, not million, billions of hours have been spent watching a sarcastic Swedish comedian play video games and tell jokes. 100 billion hours. That's an addiction. So very important if you have children, don't get lost in short-term stimulation, because if that short-term stimulation or the action phase is not connected to bigger achievement and it's not connected to a higher aspiration, this is the source of addiction. This is what people become addicted to. So that action phase, it's okay to have some of it. And it's important, yet if we have too much of it, it can easily dominate our lives in a way that's not healthy for any of us. Now, that's over-focused on action. Some people, as I mentioned, are over-focused on aspiration. And as Adam Grant said in his great book, they preach all the time, give and take. They preach all the time. They talk too much. And what they're talking about is higher level things. They get all excited. Are they achieving anything to make the world better? Maybe not. Are they doing anything about it? Maybe not. So very important not to get lost in that phase either. And if you have especially children, make sure they don't get lost. College is where people can get lost in this. They're around idealistic people, which is good. But if they're not careful, these idealistic people can be devoid of any real achievement in the world. They're kind of lost in their heads. Now, the other thing is overweighting for ambition. This, for you and the people that I work with, is probably much more of a potential challenge. So go to the next slide. As we journey through life, it's important to simultaneously achieve and at the same time enjoy the process. Simultaneously achieve and at the same time enjoy the process of life. So what I'm going to teach you is very important for leaders at all levels. My personal coaching clients, as I mentioned, I'm proud to say, are typically CEOs, leaders of wonderful organizations, for-profit, not-for-profit. Well, what I'm going to teach you now applies to leaders at every level. And I think actually the younger you are when you learn these things, the better. The younger you are when you learn these things, the better. Most of my clients would tell you, they kind of wish they knew some of this stuff beforehand. They kind of wish they knew some of this stuff before now. Now, simultaneously achieving and enjoying the process. The greatest college basketball coach in history was John Wooden at UCLA. I had the privilege of getting to spend some time with him. I was a minimum wage employee in a bookstore across the street, and he was a friend of the owner, so he frequently came to visit us. Just a wonderful, wonderful human being. He's actually been in my class before, which I was quite honored to have him there. Greatest coach in history, you know what he said? I never focus on the results. I focus on the process. I never focus on the results. I focus on the process. He said, if you do your best and win, be proud. If you do your best and lose, be proud. If you don't do your best and win, you have nothing to be proud of. You have nothing to be proud of. Well, a great coach, and he simultaneously taught people to focus on achieving the process of life, enjoying the process of life while achieving at the same time. Very, very important point for you to learn. And the younger you are when you learn this, the better. Now, don't become addicted to results. The most widely read poem in history is called the Bhagavad Gita. It's kind of the essence of Hindu philosophy. And the whole essence of the Bhagavad Gita is this. You have the protagonist, which is Arjuna, the great general, and Krishna. And what happens is this Krishna is giving him advice, and Arjuna says, I've got two choices here. One's bad and the other's worse. And he was talking about how terrible it was. What's the message you got back? It is what it is. Do your best and make peace. It is what it is. Do your best and make peace. One of the great CEOs or former CEOs that's a member of my little club is named Harry Kramer. I love Harry Kramer. He was the CEO of Baxter. He retired at a pretty young age. He was a CEO when he was very, very young. And I was in our class with Harry, and he was teaching some of our 100 coach people, and I was kind of given a challenge. Somebody said, you know, Harry, how do you sleep at night? In your job, you've had to fire people. You've had to lay people off. You've had to make incredibly difficult decisions. How do you sleep at night? He said, I never have any trouble sleeping at night. I only ask myself two questions. Question one, did I do what I thought was right? And question two, did I do my best? And if the answer is, I did what I thought was right at the time, maybe it was wrong. When I did it, I thought it was right. And two, I did my best. He said, I can always sleep at night. That's a great way to look at life. All you can ever do in life is you do what you think is right, you do your best, and you make peace. Let me give you another analogy. I love this story. It's the parable of the golfer and the beer can. The golfer and the beer can. Now imagine a golfer. He's playing for the country club championship. Oh, his little club, very excited. Very, very excited. Country club championship. He's ahead going into, no, he's tied going into the last hole. Oh, he's tied for the lead. In front of him, there's a foursome. They're drinking beer and making noise, very bad. He's upset, but he blocks it out. He hits the first drive on the 18th. Beautiful drive. What happens? The ball hits something and careens into the rough. Now he's in a terrible position. What happens? He walks up the fairway and sees a beer can. The idiots in front of him have left a beer can on the fairway. He is so angry. He starts walking to the shot. What does a golfer need to do? Back to do not become attached to results. Breathe. Breathe. Forget about the shot. It's over. Forget about the idiots in the beer can. It's over. Forget about winning the club championship. Focus on one thing. Hit the shot in front of you. Hit the shot in front of you. As we journey through life, Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner, has a great quote. What does he say? What I see is all there is. What I see is all there is. Keep focused on the shot in front of you. The golfer walks to the ball. What is the higher purpose? Well, he's got to have a strategy. What is this shot all about? Figure out your strategy, block everything else. Don't focus on the previous outcomes or winning the tournament. Focus on one thing, hit the shot in front of you. And There's a couple of reasons do not become totally attached to results. One is we don't have total control over the results. If you look at my new book, The Earned Life, one of the kind people who wrote an endorsement for my book is named Albert Bourla. Albert's the CEO of Pfizer. I have the privilege of working with Albert. A few years ago, Albert, a couple of years ago, I said, Albert, how's it going? He said, well, pretty good. We came up with this vaccine, that's pretty nice. Saved a lot of lives. Good job. I took that myself. Company values all-time high. Stock price all-time high. Good. CEO of the year. Hey, new book. On and on. Fantastic year. So I asked Albert a question. What's your challenge? You know what Albert's answer was? Very profound. Next year. Well, no matter what we achieve, there's always going to be next year. Next year, next year. And if you don't enjoy the process of life, it's very easy to get burned out. Why? You're so fixated on results, your ego become attached to results, that you can forget what we're doing and why it's important and the process. One of the great people that was one of the 60 people in a group is named Safi Bahcall. Safi Bahcall, a brilliant, brilliant man, a scientist. And he talks about things like a scientist. And he said, I've learned something from Curtis Martin, the famous football star. He said, Safi said, I've finally learned one thing. Happiness and achievement are independent variables. Now, Safi said, it's important to achieve. It's important to have a higher purpose, but also to have achievement that is connected to that higher purpose. He said, I also realize everyone in this group has achieved ridiculous amounts. Some are very happy and some are miserable. He said, I realize that happiness and achievement are independent variables. I said, Safi, it's great that you've realized this. One, you already have a PhD in physics from Stanford. Two, you successfully started 4 companies and made millions and millions of dollars. You wrote a New York Times bestselling book called Loon Shots. You consulted the presidents of the United States. That's not enough achievement to make you happy. Tell me what is. Well, it's a very deep point. He said, you're right. Well, very important to achieve. And everyone I coach, I try to help them achieve more. It's also important that their achievements are connected to a higher purpose in life. And finally, that as you achieve, you enjoy the process of life. And you're engaged in what you're doing. I'm going to give you 2 examples of this. One involves Jack Welch. Now, Jack Welch was the former CEO of GE, one of the most famous CEOs in America. And Jack Welch years ago had a triple bypass surgery and he almost died. Oh, very bad. My friend is a good friend of Jack Welch and he asked him a question. What did you learn about life when you almost died? He said, you know what I've realized? Why am I drinking the cheap wine every night? Jack Welch was rich. He loved great wine. Yet he was drinking the cheap wine every night. Why? He was waiting for the other wine to appreciate in value. He said, this is insane. I'm Jack Welch. I'm rich. What am I doing here? Enjoy it. Now, finally, very important for people at every level of the company, the next story. There's some famous research about marshmallows. It was done at Stanford University. In this research, one kid is given a marshmallow. And the kids are all given a marshmallow, and you're told, if you eat 1 marshmallow, you get 1. But if you wait, you get 2. Well, allegedly, these people did longitudinal research that showed the people that ate 1 marshmallow ended up becoming losers, and the people that ate 2 marshmallows ended up having great lives. Well, they didn't do one thing in the study, though. They didn't take the kid that ate 2 marshmallows and said, hey kid, wait a little bit more, you can have 3. Wait some more, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 1,000. Where does the story end? An old man sitting in a room waiting to die, surrounded by thousands of uneaten marshmallows. Well, at every year and every stage in life, sometimes you got to eat the marshmallow. Sometimes you just got to eat the marshmallow and enjoy the process of life. I want to do a little exercise right now. Think about that marshmallow thing and think about something that you've been putting off that you really want to do, like Jack Welch, that you would enjoy doing. But you said, well, I'm not going to do that yet. What is that delayed gratification that sometimes needs to be real gratification? See, the problem with this research, it has one message: delayed gratification is always good. If all you do in life is delayed gratification, you know what you get in life? A lot of delay and not a whole lot of gratification. So think about your life. Where's one marshmallow you want to eat? What's something you want to do now that's going to bring you joy that you know you maybe have been waiting? Well, don't wait too long. And I can tell you, I'm 74. The years pass quick. Don't wait too long. Sometimes you just need to eat the marshmallow. And the other challenge of life, which we're going to discuss next, is as we journey through life, being fully engaged and present in the moment that we're there. Be engaged and present. And this sounds easy. It isn't. It's hard to keep focused. One of the biggest challenges I have with CEOs now is keeping focus. This is hard at every level in the company. Keeping focused. What am I doing? Why am I here? We are barraged with distractions, noise, emails, media. It's very challenging just to keep focused. Easy in theory, hard in practice. Hard to be engaged. Let me give you a great story. One of the people in the group I mentioned is Pau Gasol. Pau Gasol is just a wonderful person, fantastic basketball star, and played with Kobe Bryant on the Lakers. And Kobe was his good friend. He ended up naming his new child after Kobe's daughter that died. Just a A+ human being. And in our little groups, people all pick something to do better. And this is what he picked. My wife says I need to be more present. I need to be more present. I'm sometimes distracted. He said, I'm training for the Olympics. I'm 41. It's a lot of work. And I just need to be there when I'm there, not kind of checked out. And then every week we have a report card. How'd it go? He goes, not good. He said, this week my wife was upset. She said, pal, you're kind of not really all there. You're not fully attentive. But he said, Marshall, I was tired. Tired. I said, well, how tired were you? Oh, I was so tired. I said, pal, my son and I paid $1,000 a piece. And we watched you play against the Boston Celtics there in the World Championship game in LA. And you were running up and down the court like a maniac. Were you tired? Sounded exhausted. Coach called timeout with 2 minutes to go. Did you go to the coach and say, Coach Phil Jackson, Coach Phil, I'm a little tired. I'm a little tired. He said, I never told a coach I was tired during my entire career. I said, do you think your wife was impressed? Well, very important when we talk about the concept of being present and attentive. Half of the discussion in these great people that I work with over COVID was not about work. It was about home. When we go home, am I there when I'm there? Am I enjoying the process of being there? One of the great people in our group, I never quite could get through to him. Just a wonderful person, but never quite so happy. Never so much enjoying the moment. Very successful, not so much enjoying life. I never really seemed to click with him until I finally realized one thing. He has 2 little kids, 2 babies. He loves these kids. I finally reached him when I said this: do you want your kids to be happy? I've asked thousands of parents around the world this question. Give me one word. When my kid grows up, I want my kid to be, what's the number one word? Happy. So I asked him this question. Do you want your child to be happy? He said, more than anything. I said, do you believe in leadership by example? He said, of course. And I said, you go first. You be happy. You show that kid what it's like to be happy as a human being. You want the kid to be happy? You're the role model. You go first. Of all the things I ever said to him, that is the one thing that made the biggest impact. Remember that when you go home, you want your kid to be happy? You go first. And remember to work. You want the people that work with you to be happy. You go first. You want the people that work with you to be engaged and present. You go first. Lead by example. Okay, next slide. Now, I'm now going to share something that I learned from the great Peter Drucker. And this is going to impact about half the people that we're talking to different than the other half. And I'll explain why later. Peter Drucker, I got ranked, was mentioned, #1 leadership thinker in the world. My brain compared to Peter Drucker was that of a 10-year-old. I mean, this guy was so smart. He taught me so many things. I was on his advisory board for 10 years. And he said, a great lesson is, our mission in life is to make a positive difference, not to prove how smart we are, and not to prove how right we are. That one comment led to my book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Many people getting so lost in proving how smart we are and right we are, we forget we're not here on earth to do that. We're here to make a positive difference. Next slide. Now, I'm going to talk about credibility. And this is important in your career at every level. It's important to a CEO, it's important to a middle manager, and it's important to a first-line engineer. Credibility. We all need credibility in order to succeed. Now, what is credibility? Credibility is the quality of being convincing, believable, and trusted. If you want to achieve in life, you want to succeed in life, you need to be convincing, you need to be believable and trusted. As a parent, you want to be convincing, believable, and trusted. As a husband, wife, or partner, convincing, believable, and trusted. Hard to argue with the concept of credibility. We all need credibility. Next slide. Now, I'm going to talk about our need for approval. This is fascinating. We all need approval. Do a Google search, need for approval. More than half of the references indicate this is a psychological disorder, that somehow people that need approval are psychologically damaged. I would say, no, not so much. We all need approval, and that's not a negative thing. That's just part of being human. Our ancestors for centuries needed approval from the tribe in order to survive. They didn't get approval, they're out of the cave. It's over. You didn't get approval from that king, you are all done. We all need approval. Now, modern professionals have had to prove themselves over and over again. Many of you listening to me have been good students. You've taken tests. In fact, you have taken test after test after test after test after test with one goal: prove how smart I am. It's very difficult to stop for some people. It's very difficult to stop. Every time that we've proven we're smart, somebody patted us on the head and said nice things. They gave us an A. Oh, we felt so good. Oh, smart is good. Any human or animal will replicate behavior that's followed by positive reinforcement. Any human or animal will do this. Well, guess what? It's hard to stop doing this. Now, here's the key. It is not bad to prove yourself. And it's not bad to strive for approval from others. The question is, when is it worth it? And when is it not worth it? Now I'm going to give you a test and see where you fall on this dimension. Okay, and next slide. Now, more important lessons from Peter Drucker. And by the way, if you learn nothing from me but these lessons, you're going to have a happier life and you're going to be much better at influencing people. First, lesson 1, we're here on earth to make a positive difference, not to prove we're smart, not to prove we're right. Lesson number 2, every decision in life is made by the person who has the power to make the decision. Make peace with that. Not the smartest person, the best person, a fair person, a wonderful person. Decisions are made based on one and only one variable: power. Whoever has the power to make the decision is going to make the decision. That's life. Now, let us imagine that I need to influence you, and you have the power to make the decision. There's one word to describe you: customer. There's one word to describe me: salesperson. I'm here on earth to make a positive difference. If I need to influence you and you have the power to make the decision, you're the customer and I'm a salesperson. Sell what you can sell and make peace with what you cannot sell. Sell what you can sell and make peace with what you can't sell. Any good salesperson knows you're not going to sell everything. Sell what you can and make peace. So few humans understand this. I'm coaching one person who was a CEO of a company that was owned by a private equity firm, very famous in New York, very tough people. You know what he said? He's 41 years old, a kid. They can't tell me what to do. Ugh, they can't tell me, punk 41-year-old kid, what to do. Now, they're all multi-billionaires. Oh, they can't tell me what to do. I'm the CEO. Well, back in New York, they figured out how much it cost to fire this guy. A couple million. They didn't even care about the 2 million. They said, that's a pain in the butt. Coach this guy. Maybe you can help him. I'll say his name was Joe. I said, Joe, I'm going to help you. He said, they can't tell me what to do. I'm the CEO. I said, Joe, buddy, they can't tell you what to do. Why? It's their money, moron. They are the decision makers, not you. Your job is to help them. They are the stakeholders. It is their money, and they legitimately can tell you what to do with their money. You can't tell them. He finally kind of the light bulb goes off. He said, you're right. Well, that was 12 years ago. He stayed with the company 12 years, had a great career. They had a good relationship. He was just a young guy with a little too much ego. The younger you are when you learn this lesson, the better off it is. Decision makers are going to make decisions. Sell what you can sell. If you can't sell it, let it go. If you can't stand to be there, leave. As long as you're there, though, focus on making a positive difference, not proving you're right. At every level in the company, if you have kids, it's a great lesson for them. If you're newer in the company, it's a great lesson for you. You're here to make a positive difference, and we're all in sales. We all have to influence decision makers. That's part of everyone's job, from a first-line engineer to the CEO of the company. Next slide. Now, the credibility matrix. As promised, I'm going to ask you to now think about yourself. If we look at the credibility matrix, we can see two dimensions. One dimension is called proving ourselves. As I said, proving I'm right, trying to prove my point, selling something. And the other dimension is making a positive difference. Now, if we look at this credibility matrix, we can see 4 different boxes, low and high of each. The first one is low, letting go. Now, one of the great WOBI speakers is my good friend Alan Mulally. He goes to Ford, the company's going bankrupt, he totally turns the company around. One great lesson from Alan Mulally, when he was asked to provide a suggestion, what would he always say? Is there anyone in the Ford Motor Company who can answer this question better than I can? Or we can hire somebody who can answer this question better than I can. If the answer is yes, why am I speaking? That's not a mark of stupidity. That's a mark of extreme wisdom. He was the CEO of the company. If he gave people suggestions, they're probably going to run around and do them. What is he wise enough to know? Don't do that. Don't show off. Don't try to prove yourself if you're not going to make a positive difference. And if you don't know, have enough courage to say, I don't know, and it's okay. Letting go is a good box. Now, the other box that's a positive is called achieving credibility. I am trying to prove myself, and it is making a positive difference in this world. Let me give you an example. I spend a lot of time trying to prove myself, and I'm not ashamed of that. Amazon.com has 33 million titles. How many books do you have to sell in 1 year to be in the top half of all books sold? And the answer is 2. Half of those titles sold 0 to 1 copy. Am I arrogant enough to believe that my books are better than 16 million other books? Of course not. I'm sure many of those books are better than anything I ever dreamed of. They have to be. I have a degree in math, just the numbers. Nobody bought the books. You can write the best book in the world. If nobody buys it, it's not going to help you too much. Achieving credibility is when you are working hard to prove yourself, and in your heart you believe this is going to help me make a positive difference in the world. That's also a good thing. Now, where are the 2 negative boxes? The first one is called overselling. In my biggest selling book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, talks a whole lot about overselling. What does that mean? Winning too much, adding too much value, trying to be right all the time, trying to prove other people are wrong, winning pointless arguments, overselling. And I teach people, look, the higher up you go, the less and less it is about you being right, and the more it's about them being right. It's not about you being a winner. You're helping them be winners. Overselling. Now, most of that book was based upon my experience with my customers who tended to be CEOs in large organizations and statistically mostly men. My friend Sally Helgeson said, she's a world's expert on women in leadership, said, those are good points for your customers, men or women in those positions. It tends to be pretty common problems. She said, I work with many people, especially women, that have the opposite problem, underselling. They don't promote themselves enough. They hold back. They don't express their opinions enough. They're afraid to talk. They're underselling. Now, underselling is the world would be better if I had more credibility, and I'm not trying hard to get it. I'm underselling. And since I talked to Sally, I've done a lot of research on this. More than half the people that I work with today identify themselves as underselling as opposed to overselling. Now, let's forget about theory and we're going to talk about you. Next slide. Now, first, if you're an overseller, first I want you to identify yourself. What is your default reaction? When in doubt, is your default reaction oversell or is your default reaction undersell? Is your default reaction I'm promoting myself too much or perhaps not enough? Well, if you're an overseller, very simple suggestion. Before you try to prove yourself, what am I trying to prove and why am I trying to prove it and is it worth it? One of my great coaching clients, J.P. Garnier, was the CEO of GlaxoSmithKline. I said, what'd you learn about leadership as a CEO? He said, my suggestions become orders. If they're smart, they're orders. And if they're stupid, they're orders. If I want them to be orders, if I don't, they're orders anyway. I said, what'd you learn from me that helped you the most? He said, before I speak, ask one question. Is it worth it? If you're an overseller, breathe. Before you start selling, is it worth it? Next slide. Now, this next one is going to be hard for some of you to hear. This is for undersellers. Undersellers. For everybody that tends to under-promote themselves, quit being proud of it. Quit wearing it as a badge of honor. Another way to look at it is maybe you just lack courage. 3 questions. Question 1, if you did a better job of selling yourself, would the world be better off or worse off if you became more influential? If you became more influential, would the world be worse off today or better off? Well, most of the people I've worked with, and my guess is most of you would say, if you're honest, I think it'd be better off. Good. 2, does promoting myself and trying to become more influential make me feel uncomfortable? Uncomfortable. And the answer to that is often definitely yes. And here's my challenge to you. Question 3, what is more important to you? Your personal comfort or making the world a better place? Well, what's more important? If you're more interested in your personal comfort than making the world a better place, continue with what you're doing. If you're more interested in making the world a better place, get over it. Now, there's an old saying, my good work should speak for itself. Not really. If that were true, no company would need a marketing function. Your good work is not going to speak for itself. You are the person who's responsible for your career and your life. And if you're an underseller, by definition, ask yourself these 3 questions. Next slide. Now, before you deal with anything, I'm going to put all of this together in a simple question. Back to that Peter Drucker comment, we're here to make a positive difference. Am I willing at this time to make the investment required to make a positive difference on this topic? If the answer to that question is yes, go for it. Maybe it's a long shot, but you're trying to make a positive difference, just go for it. If the answer is no, even though it may be a big deal, let it go. Don't waste your time on what you're not going to change. You're not going to do anything about it anyway. Put your focus in life on where you can make that positive difference. Next slide. Now, we're going to talk about empathy. This is a fascinating topic. What is empathy? The ability to understand, feel, care about, and act on other people's thoughts and emotions. And I always thought that was kind of a good thing, warm and fuzzy like puppy dogs and teddy bears, empathy. Now that I've studied empathy, I realize it has a positive side and simultaneously it has a dark side. We're going to talk about both. Next slide. Now, if we look at the concept of empathy, we tend to mirror what we see and feel in others. Everyone is like a billboard. You walk down the street, you see sorrow, you feel sorry, joy and joy. And empathy works 2 ways. One is the impact they're having on me, And we think more about that. What we don't think enough about is, what impact am I having on them? We are creating this reaction in the other person as well. Next slide. Now, there's 4 phases of empathy. There are 4 phases. Understanding. What does the empathy of understanding mean? I understand where you're coming from. Now, I'm pretty good at that one. And it helps me as a coach. If I understand where people are coming from, well, that makes me obviously better at helping them, understanding what they need. The empathy of feeling. I can feel your joy. I can feel your pain. Again, sounds good. I can identify more with you, probably help you better. Empathy of caring. That sounds obvious. Well, I care about what you're doing and it's important to me. And you think, well, that sounds good. And finally, empathy of acting. I not only understand where you're coming from and feel what you're feeling and care about you, I'm going to do something about it. All that sounds wonderful. Not so much. Next slide. Each one of these can be a challenge. For example, the empathy of understanding. Sometimes when we understand people and why they're failing, we start making excuses for them. We say, well, yeah, he failed because of the following reasons. Therefore, failure for him is okay. We set low expectations. And all of a sudden, we may be doing more harm than good. The empathy of feeling. I'm the privilege of being the coach of Dr. Patrick Frias, head of the Rady Children's Hospital. He said as a young intern, the first 2 months, he was a doctor. He went home and cried every night. He's watching kids die. He said, I have to learn. I got to let go of that. I cannot do this job. You've got to let go of that empathy and feeling sometime. I work with Dr. Downing, head of St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Dr. Downing, one thing he teaches me, don't cry when you're around those kids. You may feel like crying. You may feel their pain. Don't do that in front of the kids. That is one of the worst things you can possibly do. Why? Your crying just makes them more miserable. The empathy of caring sounds good, but it can lead to burnout. You care too much and you can't let go. And let me give you a funny story about this one, which I never thought I'd tell. A hedge fund manager who tells me, I quit doing what I'm doing. I quit managing others' money. And was asked the question, why? You know what he said? I started caring. Before, as a young hedge fund manager, I was willing to take bets, take risks, and it pretty much worked out. I won a lot and I lost a lot, but obviously I won more than I won. That's why I'm worth billions of dollars. He said, I started caring. I became too conservative and I wasn't as good. That's why parents don't operate on their children. They care too much. Caring is good to a point. And finally, the empathy of acting. I'm going to solve your problems and help you out. If you're not careful, one of the nicest women I know says, I'm a people pleaser. I'm solving everybody's problems. They're not solving their own problems. The empathy of caring. So here's the key. Empathy is not in and of itself a good or bad thing. Just ask yourself, when is my empathy helping me make the world a better place? And when is it getting in the way of me making the world a better place? Next slide. Finally, demonstrating authentic and positive empathy. One of the great people in our group is a Broadway star, Telly Leon. And I asked Telly, how do you get out there night after night and demonstrate caring and empathy when you've done the same show 1,000 times? You know what he said? Great lesson. I focus more on how am I making them feel than how is this all making me feel? And he said, I was a kid, 8-year-old little boy and not too big, and life wasn't too easy. And I went to a Broadway play and had wonderful music and I loved it. And it was so inspirational and positive. Every night I tell myself this show is for that kid. I'm bringing joy to that kid. So every night I'm focused not on me, I'm focused on them. To me, that's the key of demonstrating authentic and positive empathy. I am being what I need to be now for them, not for me. Next slide. As promised, I'm now going to finish with something that takes 3 minutes a day, costs nothing, and it's going to help you get better at almost anything. What's this called? The daily question process. And this will tie together everything we've discussed so far. First, make a list of what's most important in your life. Think of that heroes exercise. What are your values? What matters to you? Could be friends, family, customers, health, business, work, pleasure. Whatever it is, make a list. Every question has to be answered with a yes, a no, or a number. 7 boxes across, one for every day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And at the end of the week, guess what? You're going to get a report card. I've done this for 25 years. You know what I learned? It's hard. That report card is not going to be as beautiful as a corporate values plaque you see stuck up on the wall. This is very easy to understand and it's very hard to do. Next slide. I'm now going to teach you what my daughter Kelly Goldsmith taught me. My daughter, I'm very proud of, graduated from Duke University, was on a TV show called Survivor Africa, big, huge show in America. She left Hollywood, moved to Yale, got 2 master's degrees, PhD from Yale, and now she's chairman of the marketing department at Vanderbilt. So very proud dad. Kelly taught me something, because she knows more about research than me, about active questions. She said, Daddy, in this daily question thing, teach people to ask active questions. Now I'm going to finish with something that takes 3 minutes a day, costs nothing, it's going to help you get better at everything. And if you remember nothing else, just do this. It'll tie together everything we've discussed so far. Next slide. Here are 6 active questions I want you to ask yourself every day. And they all begin with the same phrase, did I do my best to? Number 1, set clear goals. Every day, did I do my best to set goals? And those goals should be connected to achievement, which is connected to your higher purpose. Am I doing my best to make progress toward goal achievement every day? Remember, I said, don't abandon achievement to be happy, but don't abandon happiness to achieve. Am I doing my best every day to make progress? Number 3, am I doing my best to be happy every day? Am I doing my best to find meaning, to build positive relationships, and to be fully engaged? These questions pretty much cover the gamut of what's really important in life, especially if you had questions about health. These 6 questions have been shown to produce a dramatic positive difference in people's lives. I've done a lot of research on this. We've asked people to do this day after day and measure what happens over time. When people do this every day, about 34% of the people say, just asking these questions every day helped me get better at all 6. 34%. 67% say, I got better at 4. 91% says, got better at 1. And almost nobody says they got worse. Why? Every day, these 6 questions get you to focus on the one thing in life you have total control over. Who's that one person? Me. Self-management? Me. Not just is the company engaging me. Am I setting my own clear goals? Am I working to make progress? Am I doing my best every day to be happy, to find meaning, and to build relationships? Am I doing my best every day to be fully engaged? Now, just doing that makes a huge positive difference in your life. And let me summarize with one great question. It was taught to me by my friend Carol Kaufman. A simple question as you journey through life to put all this together. Go back and review what we've talked about. Who are your heroes? What are your most important values? What are your aspirations? How are your achievements aligning with these? And how are you doing enjoying the process of life? How are you doing in terms of building credibility? Trying to prove yourself when you shouldn't, letting go when you shouldn't? How about demonstrating empathy? Demonstrating those things when you should and also letting go when you shouldn't. And then finally, every day challenging yourself based on that context with these questions. Setting those goals that are aligned, making progress, being happy, finding meaning, building relationships. And that final good question every day is carry a little card around with one question. Am I being the person that I want to be right now? Am I being the person that I want to be right now? It's been my honor to talk with you, and I'm so looking forward to hearing any questions you might have for me.
Thank you so much to Marshall. Yeah, great presentation there. Marshall, you seem to have changed location slightly. You've moved from your office to, what can I see? It looks like, is it Towers of Dubai behind you, palm trees?
Well, I have my home in Dubai. I have not my main home, but I have a second home in Dubai. And I live in a very small building, Chris, called the Burj Khalifa. Burj Khalifa, for those of you that don't know, the Burj Khalifa is the largest building in the world. It's twice as tall as the Empire State Building. So I have a home here in the Burj Khalifa. Right now, I'm on the 37th floor of the Burj Khalifa. It's night. I'm looking out over the city of Dubai with a beautiful view. So life is good.
Excellent. Absolutely. Sounds wonderful. As I say, thank you so much for the presentation there. Really, really enjoyed it. Lots to dive into. We've got lots of questions coming in already. So thank you for everyone who sent questions in. You've got your opportunity still. We've got went a little bit over there. We've got about 20, 25 minutes for questions. We're going to dive straight in, Marshall, with the first one that's come in here. This one's from Samantha. She says, we talk a lot about purpose as a company, and you talked about it there in the presentation. Right. She says, I've always struggled to identify my personal purpose. What is your recommendation on identifying that higher purpose or calling?
Well, I like the exercise we suggested, the heroes exercise. Get in the habit of thinking, who are the most important people in my life, the people I look up to, the people I want to be like. And that is kind of a statement of what your values really are. And ask yourself and challenge yourself, if I could be anything, who do I want to be? What do I want to stand for? What is my purpose? I'm going to give you another good book about this from my friend Hubert Joly. Hubert was the CEO of Best Buy, did a spectacular job of changing the company. And what he said is, at every level in your life, you need to connect that purpose, the higher purpose in your life, with what you're doing right now. And maybe sometimes it's, I need to make money, but that money can be important to me because that money could pay for an education for my child. That money could really help me in my future. So Hubert always thought the more you can connect your personal purpose with what you're doing every day, the better off you're going to be. So the book is called The Heart of Business. It's by Hubert Joly, Hubertjoly. He talks about me. He talks about having a coach, talks a lot about life. He left the CEO of Best Buy when the stock was at the top and did a great job. And now he's a professor at Harvard Business School.
And just picking up on that a little bit further, Marshall, how important do you think it is that your personal purpose should align with your organizational purpose?
I think it depends. Let me tell you why. Let's take someone who might have a job that's not glamorous at all. Maybe an immigrant who's come to the United States is doing 2 or 3 different jobs, cleaning toilets, cleaning the floors, whatever, not a glamorous job at all. Yet that person is making money to help put a kid through college. That person might be sending money back home to parents. That work might be very closely aligned with a personal purpose. The work itself may or may not be, motivational. On the other hand, the outcome of that work might be. So you need to ask yourself the question, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And you need to have an answer to that question. Why am I doing that? It could be connected to it. And by the way, Chris, sometimes the purpose is the work itself. And sometimes the purpose is the result of the work, the rewards you get from the work. So both of those could be important.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We've got another question here. This one is coming from David. I loved when you were talking about the marshmallow test. It's one of my personal favorite experiments. And I think you're one of the first people to tell me, eat the marshmallow. I just thought that's okay. That's good advice. That's good to think about that. And perhaps, delaying gratification isn't always good. David picks up on the marshmallow. That's why I mention it. David says the problem with the marshmallow test is that they can become stale. What happens when too much time? Yeah. What happens when too much time lapses between what you're going for and actually achieving it?
Oh, I think this is a spectacular question. So thank you, David. A great question. Let me give you the extreme example. I don't know if all of you figured this out yet, but I'm a philosophical Buddhist, and Buddha was brought up protected from life. He was able to sneak out of that palace 3 times. The first time out, he learned people get old. And number 2, you learn people get sick. And number 3, you die. You get old, you get sick, and you die. That's kind of in the cards. Well, let's talk about this delayed gratification. The problem is you keep delaying gratification long enough, guess what's going to happen? You get old, you get sick, and you die. Well, okay, big, game over. A little bit late in the game. So I think David is making a really good point. The key is, look, most people, Chris, that you and I meet, they delay gratification. I mean, I have a PhD. Anybody that has a PhD delays gratification. Anybody who writes a book delays gratification. So it's not like I'm against delayed gratification. The point is you need a balance, because if you don't, all you do in life is experience delay, and what you don't experience is gratification, and you don't enjoy the process of life. So that's a great question. Thank you, David. Yeah, you don't want a life filled with stale marshmallows. No.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think you have made a good point there, and that is true, that most people watching this do, to a certain extent, delay gratification. So I suppose the question then does come in: when do you decide to do it, and how do you decide to eat the marshmallow, or whatever it may be, and actually decide that's because naturally, as you say, successful people, you say you coach winners, and it has been proven winners typically do tend to do that as a matter of course.
Right.
So the natural inclination is always going to be to do that, right?
Right. Actually, more of the people that I coach need to be reminded to eat the marshmallow than need to be reminded not to eat the marshmallow.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, the people I coach, they're not just achievers, these are ridiculous achievers, right? And the people on this call, here's an important point on the call. Everyone on this call is not a CEO. On the other hand, let's take some younger people on this call. Very important point. You've got your youth. Now, back to this business of enjoy the balance of life and all that. One young guy says to me, easy for you to say, you're rich. I said, well, you're right. I am rich. I'm rich. I got some millions of dollars. I've sold 3 million books. Life is good. But I looked at him. I said, well, let me help you a little bit here. How old are you? He said, well, I'm 34. I said, I'm almost 74. And I said, I got a little trade for you. You see, you want the millions of dollars and the books and all that stuff? You give me the 40 years there, we got a deal. If we got a deal, you give me the 40 years, you can have the millions of dollars, you can take the books. I'll take the 40 years. Well, my point is, don't blow your youth. Don't blow your youth on some goal of what you're going to do when you get old. And God, what amazes me is people that sit there and they blow a large part of their life thinking about, quote, retirement. What's that about? You're waiting to start living after you're 65 years old. That's not such a good plan. Well, of course, I'm not one to talk about retirement. I'm 74 and I work all the time. So I probably failed the retirement course anyway.
But I'm assuming that's because you love what you do, right?
That is right. Yeah. I don't feel like I work. I just have fun.
Yeah. This one has come in from this is from Anna, and she talks about something that you brought up at the beginning of the presentation. And she says, what happens? He says, I feel like my actions aren't aligning with my ambitions and my aspirations. Right. It's like I feel trapped. I'm fearful of change. So I kind of have these ambitions, these aspirations, but I'm not acting towards it. How would you kind of advise Anna to kind of get over this fear of change to help her move towards her meeting those ambitions and aspirations?
Well, again, my friend Sally Hoagson really helped me with this. We did this book, How Women Rise Together, which, hugely successful book. I'm so proud of the book. It was 85% her and 15% me, but she taught me a good lesson. And it could well apply. What's the person's name again?
Anna.
Anna, this could well apply to you. Sally said, never sacrifice your career for your job. Never sacrifice your career for your job. And she said, specifically women, even more than men, get so wrapped up in doing a perfect job that ultimately they sacrifice their career. And you're better off doing a 95% high quality job and taking 5% of that energy and donating it to your future and your career as you are doing this 100% perfect job and not thinking about your future and your career. So The other thing is you can fall into a trap. Another great trap is, well, if I do good work, I should be promoted. Not necessarily. You could do a good job at your present position and not be the most qualified person for that next position or a future position. So the key is don't get so wrapped up doing your job that you may inadvertently forget about your career and not do what's in your own long-term best interest or even the long-term best interest of the company.
Excellent. Thanks, Marshall. Sandra, a question from Sandra here. She says, what would be a simple technique to be more present in the moments when you have so many things to do at the same time? So it's the kind of the curse of busyness, I think Sandra's perhaps referring to here.
Well, I like that Carol Kaufman technique. Am I being the person that I want to be right now? And I can tell you, Sandra, this is harder at home than it is at work. It's hard at work, but it's even harder at home. Why? We forget where we are. We use the cell phone in front of the kids. We just get lost. So I would say breathing. Where am I now? Am I being the person I want to be now? Am I being present now? Very easy in theory, very, very difficult in practice to do. Not because people are stupid or mean or evil. There is so much going on. Now, the other thing I'm going to say may not relate to her, may or may not, but it relates to a lot of people. Media can be a disaster. These things can be complete and total disasters. The average kid that's flunking out of school in the United States, 55 hours a week on non-academic media. Well, very important. Don't get lost in other people's lives. One thing that never works for having a great life is called vicarious living. There's a Swedish guy, Chris, did you ever hear of PewDiePie?
I don't think I have, no.
PewDiePie, you should know who PewDiePie is. He's a very sarcastic Swedish guy that plays video games. And kids watch him play video games. How many times has some kid watched PewDiePie play a video game so far? 28 billion. 28 billion, not million, 28 billion views of watching some sarcastic Swedish guy play video games. Back to your good question, live your own life. Back to avoiding distraction. You don't live Kim Kardashian's life or the PewDiePie's life or these other characters' life or social media life. Live your own life. And on a serious note, if you have kids, unfortunately, depression among adolescents, teenagers, young adults is at an all-time high. It's just gone through the roof. One of the problems, people living someone else's life. They're watching these people live these fake lives on Facebook, other things. Don't do that. One way to keep focused is you live your own life. Don't get lost in media. Don't get lost in this, all of this distraction. Live your own life. By the way, they don't care about you. PewDiePie doesn't care about you. Kim Kardashian doesn't care about you. The basketball star doesn't care about you. Live your own life.
Yeah, good advice. Thanks, Marshall. You referred in your presentation to the fact that we all need approval, that this is something which is quite natural. Right. That being the case, what are some of the ways in which we can reduce this need? Should we be looking to reduce this need, and how can we look to do it?
Here's the key. First, we do all need approval, so don't look at it as a psychological dysfunction. It's part of life. It's okay. The key is needing approval in and of itself is not the problem. The problem is, am I behaving in a way that's leading me to ultimately make a better positive difference in the world? And I mentioned my book as an example. All right, I'm out there selling books. Well, I'm not ashamed of that. My friend Hubert Joly, a great example. Here's a guy who's the CEO of Best Buy, and he's going to write a book. What did I tell Hubert? Look, Hubert, you're going to write a book. You're a peddler. You're a book salesman. If you don't want to go out and sell books, guess what? Don't write one. You're writing it for yourself. You want somebody to buy it. Well, to me, that is not a negative. He worked very hard to get approval for that book and for himself as a teacher. And you know what? He did a good job of it, and it paid off for him. Most of those WOBI presenters, not all of them, but most of those WOBI presenters, they're not there by accident.
Yeah.
They all work pretty hard at promoting themselves. Look at the people I'm working with, Simon Sinek, they worked hard. They're not there by accident. They worked hard. Well, nothing wrong with that, because if you believe in your heart, this is going to make the world better, just do it. So the first thing is get over guilt. All humans need approval. So get over that ridiculous, I shouldn't feel guilty about needing approval. We all need approval. And on the other hand, just ask yourself, is my striving for approval going to help me make the world better? Okay, next.
Okay, all right. Next, there was, I was particularly interested by the fact that you said that achievement and happiness are independent variables.
Right.
So why do we look to achieve if it doesn't necessarily make us happy? Surely we kind of program to be happy. That's kind of our default state. So why, if achievement doesn't lead to happiness, why do we want to achieve?
Number one, happiness is not our default space.
Ah,
That's incorrect assumption number one. Our default space is inertia. Our default space is not to be happy or to find meaning. Our default space is to do whatever we've been doing. Now, here's the key to achievement. Achievement is a good thing in and of itself, but here's the achievement trap. I will be happy when. After I achieve something, I will be happy. Money, status, BMW, condominium, whatever it is, I will be happy then. That's where you go off the track. Michael Phelps thought about killing himself. Albert Bourla, CEO of the year, you can't achieve anymore. The people I coach are all hyperachievers. And the people on this call, a lot of them, as you and I discussed this, are future achievers. I'm not saying they shouldn't achieve. Achievement is great. Enjoy achievement, have fun. Here's the key, though, to achievement. If you align your achievement with a higher purpose and you enjoy the process of achievement, you win, win, win. That's the goal. The goal is not to not achieve. I still try to achieve. Look, I got a PhD. I've done 51 books. It's not like I never achieved anything. I've achieved plenty. On the other hand, I'm still trying to achieve things. On the other hand, hopefully the achievement that I'm making is connected to some higher purpose other than just doing it. And then number two, the good thing I could say for myself, you've known me for a while, I enjoy the process. I love what I do. So why am I talking to you right now? I don't have to do this. I enjoy it. I enjoy trying to help people. I think it's valuable. And so I'm having fun with it. So I don't think that achievement is in any way a bad thing. On the other hand, be happy to be happy. Now, Chris, let me give you another misconception. If I am happy, I achieve more. Wrong way of thinking. Wrong way of thinking. That goes back to everything is always about achievement. Be happy to be happy and achieve to achieve. Don't combine the two.
super. Excellent. All right. Thank you. So I'm just looking, maybe got a couple of minutes left. So we'll try and get through at least one more question. You talked about empathy, and right. That was, again, I thought that was a very interesting part of the presentation, because you, again, put forward kind of the misconception that empathy is always positive. And you said that isn't actually the case.
That's what I thought till I was 70 years old.
Well, I have to be honest, Marshall, a lot of people that I speak to, a lot of thought leaders, and a lot of people talk about in new leadership today, empathy is the skill. It's like, it is the soft skill which leaders need today. So when I hear you coming on and you're saying, yep, empathy isn't always good, it kind of rings a bell for me. So how do we find this balance? Because some empathy surely is good. So how do we realize when we're kind of tipping over, and how do we kind of find this happy medium between what the right amount of empathy?
Well, and I think the important point is go back to people like the hedge fund. I love the story of the hedge fund manager, by the way. The reason I love it is the last person in the world you think is guilty of excessive empathy is a hedge fund manager, of caring too much about people. They're this stereotype of numbers, make a buck, right? And I'm listening to this guy get interviewed, and he said, I became less effective when I started caring. Because you know what? I became afraid to take a risk. And I wasn't as good. That's why I don't invest other people's money. He was honest, very straightforward. So the key is this helping me be who I want to be? Dr. Frias is a great human being. He went home and cried every night. You know what he said? I can't do this. See, the other thing is he's got a wife, he's got a family, he's got kids. He can't live that way and be an effective doctor. Well, either he lets go of that stuff when he goes home, or he can't do his job. So you need to ask yourself, is this helping? The other key back to empathy, I think, and I just went to an interesting talk with Dr. Bob Waldinger. He did this big Harvard study, longevity study on life and stuff. Fascinating guy. And he said it's very important to have these casual, positive relationships. But what he said is empathy is a two-way street. You need to ask yourself not just how do they make me feel, but how am I making them feel? And too many people focus on empathy saying, well, gee, I feel your pain. Are you helping the other person because of this? Like that kid sees you cry, you're not helping that kid. It's the worst thing you could do. You make the kid feel like a monster. Well, why are you doing this? Well, the key is if you focus on the other person, you can answer that question. Am I doing this in a way that's good for that other person? I'm helping other people, or am I just wallowing in myself?
Super. Marshall, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you for your time. Our time is up, so I want to be respectful of that. But thank you so much. It's been wonderful. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, as I say, thank you so much for Marshall for joining us today from his home in Dubai. It's a pleasure, an honor really, to have someone with his experience and the insights that he's got to come on and share those with us today. Thank you to all of you for joining us for the program. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions. They were fantastic as always. Really appreciate that. A quick reminder, we're going to be sending out the certificate of attendance. That'll be coming out very shortly. So please keep an eye on your emails for that. And when you leave the meeting today, you should get a pop-up on the screen, which will ask you for a very short questionnaire feedback on the program today. So if you could just take, it should be less than 30 seconds just to answer that would be superb. Right, so we have our next digital masterclass coming up at the end of March. That's going to be with Yuri Levine. He's going to be talking to us about his experiences as an entrepreneur and the lessons that we can learn as business people in any type of organization from his experiences growing, innovating, selling a number of different companies. So that should be a fantastic session with Yuri coming up next month. Hope to see many of you here for that session in March. But until then, thank you and goodbye.